Thank you for taking the time. I'm sure you've answered the same questions over and over and over again. So first, I'll throw it to Svetlana. I'll give you a two-part. I'll say, how are you, and how did you wind up working on this wonderful project, which answers so many things that we've been wondering for decades?
Wow, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. That's the first time I was asked that today. So already you've got a bonus point there. How did I come to working on the project? Alexis approached me about the film just before the pandemic started. We met at a company, a documentary production company run by Alex Gibney called Jigsaw Productions in Lower Manhattan. And we were working on different films at the time, but our offices were adjacent to one another. So we had sort of gotten to know each other just through that, through walking in the hallways. And it was actually at the holiday party in January of 2020 that Alexis had just come back from visiting with Marlon Richards about this project and started telling me about it. And I was very intrigued and basically hounded her until she brought me into the fold in a more official capacity.
That's her version. Now let me tell you the actual version.
Please do.
I mean, you know, when there's just smart people around you and you think, oh, I want to work with that person. So that's how I felt about Svet. And the project did come from Marlon, and it was clear that this was going to be a long project. People didn't really know who Anita Pallenberg was, you know, when we were looking for funding here. So we knew that fundraising would be, you know, a little harder, and it would take a big commitment. It was going to be a labor of love film. So having a dedicated team and a collaboration in from the beginning is very important in films like that, you know.
Right. Now, as a person who's done music licensing and all that, I know that the Stones, it could be very complicated because does APCO own this? Do the Stones own this? There's different camps and different eras. Was that the hardest part of this? Or was the hardest part knowing what to put, knowing that nobody can watch a 6-hour documentary?
Well, it was a difficult thing to know what, you know, that you always have things that you wish you could include in a film, but a film just can only be so long. So I would say creatively, there were definitely some, you know, little bits and pieces that we wish we could have included that we couldn't, just because the film could only contain so much. On the music front, you know, we actually ended up using the First Amendment, part of the First Amendment law, which is a fair use doctrine, because we were, you know, specifically talking about the creation of these songs in the context of Anita's story. So we with an attorney pretty closely on that front to help us define and navigate using that. So it was less about the clearance process than about, you know, sorting out the best way forward for us.
And to your credit, and this isn't a question, this is a compliment that will merge into a question. You have a lot of footage that we have not seen before, on top of Scarlett Johansson being involved in this, you know, just a little award-winning superhero movie starring actress right there. And then it's also about or related to one of the biggest bands of all time, if not the biggest band of all time. There's so many hooks and reasons why this documentary would appeal. But, and I don't know who this question goes to, but how much of the story did you know before you started working on it versus you learned while taping the interviews and going through the footage?
Neither of us knew a whole lot about Anita. Keith writes about her beautifully and lovingly in his memoir, Life. So there's quite a lot about her there. And we knew that we found her interesting, and we'd spoken to Marlon. But I think there was a constant process of discovery. Reading her memoirs basically gave us a look into her life. That was the definitive look, more than the Super 8. Super 8, I think, gives you a feeling and a vibe, and there's moments and frames and scenes that we love from there. But the memoir is her in her own words. So I think reading that was key for both Svetlana and I.
So again, it goes back to there's no shortage of materials that you had to choose from that you had to narrow down. So kudos on the editing work. Now, Svetlana, did you have any hesitation on doing another music related documentary? Because Paul Simon, that's another complex kind of thing. The credits that the two of you have is incredible. Most documentary filmmakers would wish they would have them, but a lot of people I know would go, I've done one music related documentary, that's enough.
No, bring them on. I'd like to do more. I love music. I mean, and I love all sorts of music. Both projects happen to be, around very similar decades and time periods. But no, I love working with music and archival rich films. It was really a delight to work on both of these projects. I know from a licensing perspective and a rights perspective, there are very thorny aspects to music estates at times, but I feel like I had a great experience working on the Paul Simon film and on this film.
Glad to hear that. Now, work in the room here. This is a new project to us, the civilians, the general population. To you two, it's years in the making. Are we allowed to know what either of you or both of you are working on next? Or do we just have to wait for the Hollywood Reporter and Variety to say, it's okay, here's the next thing?
Wait for the bidding war, the bidding war on Alexis's next film. No.
I think you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait. That's the fun. The fun is in the waiting.
Yeah.
Now, a small world thing is that some of the music for this film was done by the gentleman who does the theme song to my podcast, who's in the band Blue October. His name is Steve Schiltz. Has that name come up ever for either of you before, or is it just a coincidence that a fabulous additional music credit went from that guy to your film?
Does Steve work with Will? That's all. Yeah. So and Will is a genius and a wonderful collaborator, and we love working with him. And Alexis has worked with him multiple times. This was my first time, but definitely not the last time. So yeah, people know good people, I guess, is the
people know the good people. And the last question I have related to this film is a thing I've mentioned a few times here is you had to be very choosy about what makes the final cut due to people's attention spans. But is there enough on the cutting room floor that we could see in a Blu-ray? Meaning, if you get the Blu-ray or the DVD, that there's an extra 30 to 90 minutes of interesting things, like I assume there would be?
Definitely not 90, definitely not a full other film, but I think there are definitely gems.
Maybe 15. There's some great material we weren't able to include. The Super 8 less so, because they were stoned off their boxes and it's very shaky and dark. So we used every frame we could. But there's a lot that was said in interviews that we miss. I think we do. People talking about her humor, I think, would be for me like the section, just telling Anita jokes and talking about her humor. I think
her doing stand-up. No, it's just...
well, we would. She does this weird. We found these weird tapes where she's singing like Marlene Dietrich, and you can hear her smoking and singing and laughing, and it's great. That's great. I would definitely put that on the DVD extras.
Wow. Okay. Fingers crossed for that. But in the meantime, congrats to you both on getting this done, the early rave reviews, etc. And looking forward to what we're allowed to know that you're working on next after all the embargoes lift.
It's a film about your mom. You're going to be...
Finally gets her due. Thank you again for your time. And